I call this message, Let's Play Jeopardy, because of the genius of that quiz show, to remind us that sometimes the best questions are as important as the answers. And I feel like it's like that with that scene of the disciples in the upper room. I feel like it's like that also with you in your life, or the people that you're reflecting on and most concerned about in your family or in this community. And the questions you're asking yourself: what's next? What's the answer for us? How can we make it through this time? But I wanted to introduce to you, like I'm sure those disciples had etched into their imaginations for all time, the events of just that last few days. For the disciples have just experienced something that they'll never forget. Jesus arrested and tried, and then whipped and beaten and carrying the cross, and Jesus crucified, and Jesus dies. But then just now, they're hearing about the empty tomb. So I've spent this week behind my closed door, and I've thought about those fellow disciples long ago, huddled as it were in fear of the Jews. And I've thought about, what did they just see? What images were burned into their memories, into their imaginations, that would inform them now? And those three images that I mentioned. The first one, the way of the cross. On the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering. And Jesus, even earlier, having given his disciples a bit of that news or that indication of the journey with Jesus, is the way of the cross. And then this image of the crucifixion. And not rushing past it so much, but pondering that and recognizing that Jesus is no stranger. That this world that we live in puts him there. That I participate in putting him there. Even sometimes the church gone wrong puts him there. And then that third image, the empty tomb. This is still being processed by those disciples as they're thinking about their predicament, the jeopardy in which they feel themselves. But it offers a whole range of possibilities. And I'm presenting this to you as those are the faith images that can enter into our imaginations and help us ask the best question. Pondered one at a time, or in close sequence, getting the sweep of all three: Jesus carrying the cross, the crucifixion, and then the empty tomb. The imaginations of those disciples, fearful, lonely, poor, out of time, unanswered questions, all investments tanked. But not crowded out by all of those anxieties. Are these images that inform your and my faith? Even if it's just a little corner of our imagination, even a mustard seed of faith that allows these images to be in our imagination. In my jeopardy, however described, those images help me to formulate a better question. If I'm enduring a worst time in my life situation, my question might have been, how can I get out of here? So images in my mind, let me kind of take a stab at a deeper question. My jeopardy, my question. And here it is. What gives life meaning? And what makes it such? And what is the strength or motive of a person to live? What gives life its meaning? And what makes it such? And what is the strength or the motive of a person to live? When I think of the way of the cross, the crucifixion, the empty tomb as a backdrop to my own jeopardy situation, that's the question that I articulate, that I ask. And Jesus, we behind those locked doors suddenly appears. And he says, "Peace be to you." And then he breathes his Spirit upon us and says, "Receive my peace and receive this gift of the Holy Spirit." So there we are in the midst of our jeopardy. And you know, that's really enough. The presence of Jesus with us, his breathing his peace upon us receiving the power of his Holy Spirit. Really, that's right there. That's like almost enough for every situation. But the biblical memory, the memory that faith wants us to hold on to, is that one of those disciples, his name was Thomas, his situation was different. His nature was just simply his own nature. His disposition, his pain was not identical to that of the other brothers and sisters. So Jesus is now by his side. And he's saying, "Thomas, put your finger into these wounds in my hands. Put your hand into this wound in my side." And Thomas is now kneeling, and he's got his arms raised towards Jesus, looking up at him with a face of just amazement that Jesus knew him so well, knew what he needed in that moment. Jesus knows your questions and mine. You know, when I had come up with my question expressed above, what gives life its meaning, what makes it such, and what is the strength or the motive of a person to live, that way of the cross meditated upon, the crucifixion, the empty tomb, as my faith backdrop, that back scenery to my own jeopardy situation, I took that question and I translated it then, for some reason, into several different languages. I mean, why would I do that? I used Google Translate. I translated it into different languages like Portuguese and Spanish and German and Some of those languages I know a little bit, and I didn't know why at first. I even translated it, and there's no Google Translate for this language, Thimbukushu. I struggled, and I translated it. Ngepia kukona kukuyuva yikukara. No yayara yayo eshi akudimuka ngamu para kutaba muguva ushemo apidororu. Hey, that's that same question, loosely translated into that African language. And I realized, see, that's my method. That's my question. That's my method. Being a person who's not satisfied with speculating just on my words and my articulation of the question, but to listen to the questions of another in their own words, in their own context, in their own history. Not a bumper sticker method. And it certainly takes me out of my closed room and into an open world and an open future. What would the world look like if we practiced Christianity as an unfinished religion in an unfinished universe? What would our worship look like if we celebrated our Christianity as an unfinished religion in an unfinished universe? What would our relationships with the unchurched be like if we practice our faith, our Christianity, as an unfinished religion in an unfinished world? In God's creation, whether it's human history or in nature or the whole cosmos itself, systems break down because something new is being formed. And we're too much in it to see it in most situations, but suddenly Jesus is there in our room, in our space. And he's with us. And he says, "Be not afraid, for I am going before you always. Come and follow me. My peace I give to you. Receive my Spirit."